"Who is that?" said Jack. "I don't know," said Annie, "but we'll soon find out." She started waving. "No," said Jack. She grabbed her arm. "Let's go back to the base before he gets here." "Why?" said Annie. "But we don't know who he is," said Jack. "We don't know if he's friendly or mean or what." "But we can't go back," said Annie. "We haven't found the fourth ending yet. We don't be able to go home." "It doesn't matter. We can lock the door at the moon base until he goes away," said Jack. "Then we can get our new air tanks." Jack hurried to the moon buggy. "Come on!" He jumped into the driver's seat. Annie gave a little wave to the dot in the sky. Then he climbed into the moon buggy. The buggy took off. "Careful," said Annie. They bumped over the rocks as Jack turned the buggy around. And then they zoomed toward the past. The truck steered around craters and rocks. More than once the buggy nearly tipped over. "Whoa, slow down," said Annie. They were almost at the mountain pass. Suddenly a cloud of dust flew in the front of them. The ground trembled. "Watch it!" cried Annie. Jack couldn't see a thing. He'd stepped on the brake. The buggy jerked to a stop. The dust settled. A giant rock had fallen into the narrow pass. It was stuck between two walls of rock. They were trapped. Jack quickly found a picture of a giant rock in the moon book. He read aloud, "Rocks of all sizes crash into the moon from outer space. These rocks are called meteorites. We're lucky that meteorite didn't land on us," said Jack. "Yeah, I guess it's too big to be the end thing," said Annie, as she had climbed out of the moon buggy and was standing by the meteorite. It was more than twice as tall as she was. Jack looked at the black sky. The flying thing was nowhere in sight yet. "Well, we'll have to jump over it," Annie said. "Jump? I don't think so," said Jack. "It's too high." "I'm going to try anyway," said Annie. "Wait, let's think first," said Jack. But Annie was already backing up. "1, 2, 3, go!" she shouted and took giant leaping steps toward the meteorite. When Annie got close to the rock, she pushed up the ground. Then she flew through space and disappeared behind the meteorite. "Annie!" Jack called. There was no answer. "Oh, brother!" "Oh, brother!" Jack said. He backed up and took off toward the rock. He jumped as high as he could. Then he was flying through space. Jack hit the ground and fell face down to the dust. Jack tried to stand, but his suit was too bulky. He tried to roll over, but his suit made even that impossible. "Oh no," he groaned. "Not again." "Are you here?" asked Annie. "Did you make it?" "Yes." Jack was relieved to hear her voice, but he couldn't turn his head to see her. He could only hear over the radio. "Can you help me up?" she asked. "Nope," said Annie. "Why not?" "I fell down too," she said. "Oh, brother," Jack sighed. "Now we are really in trouble." He tried to stand again and failed. Can you see anything? He asked. Just the sky, said Annie. Wow, is it real? I'm worried about our air tanks, said Jack. I feel like it's been 2 hours. Jack, said Annie. And what about that moon man? Said Jack. Where did he go to? Jack, whispered Annie. What? He's here, she said. The moon man is here. What? He's standing above me. Chapter 7. The Moon Man. Jack's heart nearly stopped. He could hear Annie talking. Hi, she said. We come in peace. There was silence. Then Jack heard Annie say, Thank you. I have to help my brother up now. A moment later, Annie rolled Jack onto his back. She grabbed his hand and pulled him up. Thanks, said Jack. Once he was standing, the moon man was a few feet away. His face was hidden by a metal visor. He looked like a spaceman, a huge spaceman with a giant tank on his back. It was as big as a refrigerator. That's a jetpack, said Jack. I've seen pictures of future astronauts flying with those things. It's like a mini spaceship, right? The moon man didn't answer. I don't think he can hear us, said Annie. He's not hooked up to our radio. Oh, right, said Jack. I'll road it to him. Good idea, said Annie. Jack pulled out his notebook and pencil. He wrote, We're Jack and Annie. We come in peace. From America. Who are you? Jack handed the notebook and his pencil to the moon man. They looked tiny in his big hands. The moon man looked down the message. He looked at the tiny pencil. Then he turned the notebook over. Jack and Annie, as the moon man put the pencil to the paper. He was writing something very carefully. Finally, he gave the notebook back to Jack. Jack and Annie stared at the marks. Stars, said Annie. He drew stars. Maybe it's the spaceship. Space map, said Annie. Hey, Jack, maps starts with N. Oh, wow, said Jack. This must be the fourth N thing. Let's ask him what his map means, said Annie. She turned around. Well, never, she said. Why? Jack looked up from the map. That's why, said she pointed. The moon man was flying over the mountains. Thanks, Annie cried. One star, Chapter 8. One star to another. Who was that guy? Said Jack. That does his map mean? What does his map mean? I don't know, said Annie, but let's see if it works. Jack took a deep breath. Yeah, we better hurry back. I think I'm running out of air. It feels harder to breathe. For me too, said Annie. Go slow. Don't breathe too much, said Jack. He and Annie took long, flowing steps toward the moon base. Jack held his breath as if he were underwater. By the time they got to the white dome, he was all ready to burst. Annie pushed a button beside the huge door. It slid open. They hurried into the airlock. The door closed behind them and the door to the hallway opened. Jack opened the visor of his helmet. He took a long, deep breath and it let out. Ah! Let's get out of these suits, said Annie. Good idea. Jack was dying to free his arms and legs. As they moved clumsily into the spacesuit storeroom, Jack felt heavy again, and he and Annie unlocked each other's helmet, gloves, and boots and pulled everything off. Then they stepped out of their bulky suits. Whew, Jack said. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. It was great to be free, even if he no longer felt as light as a feather. Hurry, Peanut's waiting, said Annie. She led the way down the steps to the bright landing chamber. Yeah, he said softly. Jack was relieved to see the treehouse still there. Soon they'd heading home. He couldn't wait. Jack and Annie crawled through the treehouse to window. We're back, Peanut, said Annie. Squeak! Peanut ran to the letter M. We missed you, said Annie. She patted the mouse's head. We met a moon man. Sorry, Peanut, but you have to move, said Jack. We have to put the map on the M. Annie gently lifted the mouse off the M. Jack stored a star map out of his notebook. He placed it on the M, next to the mammoth bone, the mango, and the moonstone. He sighed, then sat back on his heels. Hand me the Pennsylvania book, he said. They needed the Pennsylvania book to get back home, but there was silence. Jack turned and looked at Annie. It's not working, Jack, said Annie. The book's not here. What? The map was the wrong thing. They looked around at the treehouse. It's definitely not here, said Annie. Oh no, Jack's heart sank. It picked up the star map and stared at it. Squeak, squeak. Peanut jumped out of Annie's arm and scurried back to the letter M. I've got an idea, said Jack. He reached into his pack took out his pencil. What are you doing? Said Annie. You know how to draw a connection, Jack. You connect all the stars. What happens if we try that? He drew a line from one star to another. He kept drawing until all the stars were connected. Let me see, said Annie. Jack held the paper out so they could both study it. It looks like a mouse, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. Is there such a thing as a mouse constellation? Said the mouse. I don't think so, said Jack. Squeak! Annie and Jack looked at Peanut. She was standing on the M. Oh, wow, Jack, Annie whispered. I think I know what the fourth thing is. Jack grinned. Me too. It's a mouse, they said together. Squeak, squeak. Maybe the spell is moonstone, mango, mammoth bone, mouse, said Annie. Jack touched the M thing in a turn and whispered, Moonstone, mango, mammoth bone, mouse. Let's say it over and over and see what happens, said Annie. Together they chanted, Moonstone, mango, mammoth bone, mouse. Moonstone, mango, mammoth bone, mouse. Suddenly a bright light filled the treehouse. The light got brighter and brighter and brighter. The brightness was blinding and whirling. The air spun with brightness. Then everything was clear. Peanut the mouse was gone, and Morgan Le Fay stood before Jack and Annie. Chapter 9. Morgan. Thank you, Morgan said softly. You have freed me from the magician's spell. Jack just stared at her. You were Peanut? Annie said. Morgan nodded and smiled. Really? You were with us all the time? Said Jack. On all our missions? Morgan nodded again. Why did we have to go on this mission to find a mouse? Said Jack. If you were always with us to break the spell, we had to be on the moon, said Morgan. You could have broken the minute. You could broken in the minute we arrived. Oh, that's why, Peanut. I mean, you were trying to say, said Annie. We didn't have to leave the moon base at all. Morgan nodded, smiling. But the moon came along to help us. Help us.